Self-defense is one of the most misunderstood concepts in all of martial arts. Real life violence is fast, it's brutal, and it's messy. Your body is pumped full of adrenaline and you're relying on instinct alone. Basically, a world away from the crisp, clean environment you get in a dojo. So which is the best martial art for self-defense and why? In this video, we'll talk through some of the fundamental aspects of self-defense, and by the end of it, we'll crown a winner. Plus, I'll give you some real-life self-defense tips that you can use in your training and in the street. So, before we judge styles, let's talk a little bit about what violence really is. I'm drawing here from a mix of my own experiences, but also from Rory Miller's excellent book, Facing Violence. I believe this book should be mandatory reading for all martial artists, so I will link it in the description down below. Miller identifies 7 different types of violence. However, today I'm just going to talk about the 3 that I believe we are most likely to encounter in day-to-day life. So number 1, Miller defines as the monkey dance. This is the kind of fight that you see happening in bars or in streets all over the world. He calls it the monkey dance because it's a really animalistic way of violence. It's normally 1 versus 1 and it's like a contest of pride. The instigator will normally walk up to his opponent, chest puffed out, chin up, shoulders pulled back. There's usually a push or some harsh words. Then comes a big wild right overhand haymaker. So for anyone who's ever hung out in a rough bar late at night, this is the kind of thing you see again and again, and it's really a contest of pride. The second is called a status-seeking show. The perpetrator wants to make themselves look good. They want to look tough, powerful or scary in front of their friends or peers. For this reason, it is normally against someone who is weaker or considered an easy target. They'll find someone, possibly just a random person in the street, and commit an act of violence to make themselves appear tough. The third type of violence is far more serious. This is predatory violence. Here, this comes in 2 forms. The first of which is from a resource predator. This means they are preying on a victim to get something for themselves. It could be in the form of a mugging, carjacking, even a home invasion. The second version of predatory violence is far, far worse. This is a process predator. This is someone who purely enjoys the chase. They enjoy the act of violence. This is a type of violence we see in murders, rapes. It is a really nasty side of society. And if you ever come up against this type of violence, you need to fight 100%. The most common reaction when violence starts is to simply lock up and freeze. As much as we'd like to think we might instantly leap into action, most people simply don't. This is a survival mechanism and it's designed to make us seem weak or inferior so that we simply don't get involved in fights. You've probably seen this in everyday life as well. Imagine, for example, you are about to walk through a doorway and someone suddenly opens the door. The 2 people both normally like lock up and be like, oh, they freeze there for a second before they kind of reevaluate and one person lets the other go. However, when there's true violence in the situation, this is amplified many, many times. I used to work in a really rough bar. It was the kind of place where they didn't even have glasses. All of the cups had to be plastic because people got so many smashed over their head. I'm laughing now, but it was crazy at the time thinking about it. Anyway, we'd see this all the time. There'd be this kind of monkey dance display of one guy coming up to the other, then they throw their big overhand right. Someone would get hit in the face and they'd stand there for a few seconds going, locked up. I could almost see their mind thinking, oh my God, I've been hit in the face. And then suddenly they'd get 1, 2, 3 more punches, go down, fight over. These are actually good survival instincts for the untrained person. But for a trained person, we don't merely want to survive. We want to win. And to win means you must break through the freeze. There is only one way to do this, and that is to get punched enough times that it is no longer scary, it no longer freezes you in position. If you train countering enough, then it will become an instinctive reaction. So now the question is, which martial arts actually train you well for these scenarios, and why? If you can take a good guess now, please put it in the comments. I'd love to see if you are correct. So the first of the runners-up that I believe is very useful for self-defense is Judo. This martial art is great because you start on your feet and you take the other person down. This is really useful for all kinds of situations. Judo is also great because it relies a lot on using pulls and grabs of the clothes, and in most places in the world people are usually wearing clothes when they get into a fight. They can be incredibly effective tools. Just look at the hockey players, they pull a jersey over the other one's head and then they can't even see and they just get pounded. But you could also use like a hoodie to pull someone into a throw. One of the downsides of Judo, however, is that there is no training on longer ranges. It relies on being up close and personal. Once you're in that position, it's great, but we need to be effective from longer ranges too. The second of the runners-up is boxing. This is great for self-defense because, firstly, you train punching and getting punched a lot. You become very accustomed to it. It also shines because you stay on the balls of the feet moving quickly, and in self-defense situations, rapid movement, keeping flowing, is very effective. It also focuses on laser accuracy with your hands. However, there are a few downsides because you train with a thick glove, which may not prepare you to punch open-handed very well. 2, there are no kicks or throws. And 3, things like elbows and knees are prohibited, so you don't often practice them. The third of the runners-up is kickboxing, particularly ones like Muay Thai that feature elbows and knees. Much like boxing, this is full contact, so you have lots of practice of actually striking and being struck at. Elbows and knees are extremely effective, as is controlling the opponent close up in a clinch. That could mean throwing, tripping or sweeping. You also have some very powerful and dangerous kicks. However, much like boxing, it is practiced using these big thick gloves. You have certain rules that you have to stick to, and there is an overemphasis on high kicks, which are not the best thing to go for in a self-defense situation, because if you miss and slide out, you're landing on concrete or a hard floor, and that is really dangerous. So what is the number one best martial art for self-defense? In my opinion, it is MMA, but with some caveats. Most MMA gyms emphasize ground fighting and stand-up fighting roughly 50-50. However, in a self-defense situation, the very last thing you want to do is go onto the ground unless absolutely necessary. It may be great if you can get a triangle or an arm bar in the octagon, but when you're on the ground in a bar surrounded by like a bunch of guys who want to stamp on you, that's not a great position to be in. However, that said, that groundwork does make you very good at defending when you're already in that position and helping you get back to your feet. There is also a good emphasis on countering people trying to take you down, and you can also use a lot of that grappling or chokes in a standing position too. So in my opinion, the best kind of martial art for self-defense is MMA, but divided up by these ratios. It should be 60% hands. That means crisp punches, elbows, and keeping upright using space and range to control the fight. It should be 20% clinch standing and grappling. This should be things like sweeps, throws and trips from Muay Thai, Judo and wrestling, and even like sprawling and defending yourself from takedowns. You should also train some basic ground defense, getting up from the ground and learning to defend yourself when you're there, but this should be a relatively small amount of training. Finally, there should be another 20% with the legs. Roundhouse to the legs, some push kicks, groin kicks or knees from a clinch or tied up position would be very effective for self-defense. However, as I mentioned before, stay clear of like big flying kicks, roundhouses to the head, all this cool stuff, because in a street fight that is straight up dangerous. But techniques are only half the story. I also believe that one of the best things to do is to occasionally try fighting full contact, even if it's just once, because this is a very good representation of what it's like to be in a real life violent situation. You get the same buzz of adrenaline, you get the same fear and frustration as someone is trying to physically hurt you and you are trying to physically hurt them. However, you're doing it in a relatively safe scenario. So stay watching, because up next are my top tips for self-defense. The the number one tip for self-defense is to not be in a situation where you need to defend yourself. I know that sounds obvious, but it's as simple as avoiding going to a rough bar or not walking through a sketchy neighborhood and taking the long way round. Number two is stay aware. If you are in these situations, for example, walking through a bad neighborhood, don't walk around with headphones in because you need to keep all of your senses sharp. So the third thing you can do is learn to identify the different types of violence. That means if someone comes up to you with their chest puffed in this monkey dance position, you can de-escalate things quite easily. You could say, sorry mate, don't want to get involved, let me buy you a beer. And often that will end things before violence kicks off. The same if someone is a resource predator. They don't really want to hurt you. I've had a couple of times at least where someone has pulled a knife on me and said, give me your phone or give me your wallet. Each time, despite knowing how to fight, I've said, yeah, sure, here you go. Taken out my wallet, passed it to them, have a nice day. Because the last thing I want to do is get stabbed and potentially die for like $10 to $15 or however much I'm carrying around with me. It's just not worth it. Tip number 4, if you actually get engaged in a violent situation, you need to learn to beat the freeze. Being aware is part of it. Being conditioned to get through that is another thing altogether. It's something that must be practiced, and there's only one way to do it, unfortunately. Number 5, in these situations, you need to be decisive. If someone's coming towards you and you've made the decision to fight, then strike first. Take them down before they even have a chance to get to the point of violence. Number 6, this is particularly true when there's multiple attackers coming at you. It is keep moving. The moment you stop in a fight, you are inviting people to hit you or inviting violence. If you keep moving, circling, putting space and different people between you, you become a very hard target. Number 7 is to escape fast. The longer you are in a violent situation, the greater the chances that you are going to get injured. Do enough to get yourself free and get out of there. Live to fight another day. Number 8, the final tip, if you are in real danger, then you fight 100%. It is better to be alive and have to justify your actions in a court of law than to be in the morgue. If you've enjoyed this video, don't forget to drop me a comment. Let me know, have you ever used your martial arts training in a self-defense situation? What went wrong? What went right? And why? And also, if you found this interesting, you can check out some of my books. I have a top 10 series teaching about the different kicks, punches, locks and chokes. It goes through ways to use them in real life. It goes through setups for combat sports, training and drilling exercises. I'll drop a link down below. Until next time, train smart, stay safe. Thanks for watching.